Welcome to Morning Coffee with Kyle, where Kyle spends a little bit of time with friends and colleagues in ministry talking about a topic that means something to us. And I am so grateful to have my dear friend Phil Hagen on for our Coffee with Kyle today. Phil has been a friend and colleague since our days at Columbia Seminary, which it turns out was a long time ago now. And Phil also served in our presbytery, Salem Presbytery, with me for a number of years when he was pastor at the Unity Church in Woodleaf, and I was at Concord Presbyterian over towards Statesville. But we have kept in touch, even though Phil is now out in Idaho. And today, Phil and I are going to talk about something we are both passionate about, photography. But I'll let Phil tell you more about himself and his current call and what it means to be the pastor out there in Idaho. So, Phil?
Yep. Well, thanks, Kyle. So I have been here in Idaho Falls. I'm about, if you think of where Salt Lake City is, we're about 3 hours north of Salt Lake City, on the west side of the Teton mountain range, and I've been here since September of 2017. The church I serve is almost 130 years old, so one of the older churches in the area, and so we are a very mission-centered church. Literally, the building that the food basket for the entire area of Idaho Falls, which is about 60,000 people. That building is basically loaned to for like $1 a year to them, so they can use that for food. And last year they served about 13,000 families in the course of a year. So that's quite a bit when you think of 60,000 people, 13,000 families, pretty much almost the entirety of the town if you think about it. So but I've been here with my wife Michelle and our son Jack, who's almost 7, and just love it. Love being outside and being in the outdoors, and get plenty of snow. But also, based on where I'm at, we're about 2 hours away from Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks over there in Wyoming. So it's a great place to be, and grateful to be here with Kyle today.
Well, we are so glad you are. And in addition to having some history and past geography in common, one of the things that Dr. Hagen and I both really enjoy are photography. If you are one of those folks who are around Alamance Church or a previous call of mine, then you know that Kyle often has that camera with him in his hand. I love taking pictures of things happening at the church and love to go out with my camera. We've even started a photography club here at Alamance that we tried to start a couple of years ago and never really fully got it off the ground. But as it turns out, photography is something we can be doing during a pandemic. So we're really enjoying that activity. And photography for me, other than just being something I enjoy doing, has been a way for me to focus and reflect, both puns intended, on nature and God's beauty and my place in it. And if there's anyone who knows more about that that I could have on my show, it's got to be Phil. So Phil is a much better photographer than I am, and he'll prove it to you before we're done. But Phil, of course, has those national parks available to him where he's taking some beautiful pictures. But Phil, why don't you just talk a little bit about your experience behind the camera? And how it enriches your walk with God, your spiritual practices.
Yeah, sure. So, Kyle, for me, the interest in photography was not necessarily a planned thing, in a sense that about 4 years ago, when I was still living in North Carolina, I decided I needed a camera to document a sabbatical time. I had a 3-month sabbatical, and I figured, I'll take some pictures. I'll put it on a PowerPoint. It'll be easy to kind of explain what I did. And so for me, the photography craze kind of started just accidentally, in a sense. I wasn't really planning on doing anything with it. Figured I'd do it for 3 months and then put the camera in the closet, let dust get on it and so forth. But then once I started looking at pictures, for me, it started with landscape. So in the span of the last 4 years, I have taken pictures of, and some are repeated, but I've done 120 plus waterfalls throughout the country. North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Wyoming, Idaho, Washington, Oregon. And so, and for me, the spiritual element to it is, with the landscape, is the connection to what God has created, creation, so like the physical space, so to speak. But then it also is a connection to nature and to this idea of stewardship. And God commands us in Genesis to take care of creation. And so hence pictures of bears that you can see kind of above my shoulder, and just this idea of our charge as Christians. And so for me, photography has been very instrumental for instance, if I get anxious, which never happens, not now during a pandemic or anything, but if I do, there's a particular waterfall, and I'll show a picture here in a few minutes, called Lateral Falls. It's east of Portland along the Columbia River Gorge. And it's this very long, kind of skinny waterfall. But for me, just visualizing in my mind's eye, this waterfall helps kind of calm me down. And so for me, photography helps change your perspective, because you look at the world in one light, but then to use your camera, you see a different world. Case in point, the Milky Way is always there, but you don't notice it. And literally this time of year where we are, it goes from south to north, basically, over the course of a night during the summer. And several weeks back, I was trying to get some pictures of the comet and decided to turn my camera, and I could kind of faintly see it, but not enough with your naked eye, not because we're still too close to the city. But then when I took the camera, got this beautiful picture, and I, for the first time in my 42 years plus of living, saw the Milky Way. And I was just inspired that God had created all of this around us, but God had created the cosmos. And it just kind of put things in perspective for me. So photography helps change the lens. It helps center me as a Christian and as a pastor and as a husband and father. And I think literally, I'm actually even right now, this month on Monday mornings, teaching a ministry as photography class, looking at different camera settings and how they relate to ministry. So it is an important part of my life. And for me, the pictures I have around my office or at home, they're not to be like, oh, look at this picture. For me, it's a way to connect and to center myself. And when I center myself, then I'm centering with God, Christ as the center of my life as well. So it's very fascinating endeavor, but it's very worthwhile. And now our son Jack, when a couple weeks ago, decided he wanted to see the comet, and I set the camera up and let him take his picture. Now his picture meant I set the camera setting, and then I said, you push this button, and he did, and that's his picture. But still, it counts. And since the comet Neowise won't be around for another 6,700 years, I figured it was a good thing for Jack to have. And so, and my hope and prayer as Jack gets older is that we can go on backpacking trips with cameras and bear spray and water and food and all the parts that make it, and be able to have more of a connection. And it starts with creation and just being thankful for what God has created.
I love so many things, Phil, that you just said. It just really strikes me that one of the things that has been very difficult for people during this pandemic is to find that perspective, to see the world a little bit differently, to see the world through the eyes of other people. Some of our moments during this pandemic have been us as human beings at our worst about that. But then on the other side, there have been all these great opportunities, I think, for us to see the world in a new way, to get more in touch with, as you have beautifully put it, being outdoors. That's something I know I have noticed about these months for me. I have spent so much more time outside than I would in any given year, probably 3 or 4 times as much. And when you spend time outside rather than cooped up in an office or in a home or what have you, you do literally and figuratively see the world differently, and you're in touch with different things about yourself and others that I think is really, really, really powerful and really important. And the idea that you can do that with a camera just by seeing something different through the lens, I think is really not only literally true, but a really great metaphor.
Yeah, and Kyle, and I think also it's this, have been doing photography yourself, is that what a camera is doing is capturing light. And we talk in the Christian tradition and our Christian faith about the light of Christ. And in some ways, just as a camera captures the light of the world around us, we as Christians are to capture the light of Christ in us and share it with others. Just like a camera is able to share that light with a picture, we're able to do it with our lives. And so I think that analogy, yes, I know it's cheesy, but still it makes a difference, because to be honest, there is so much more darkness in the world right now because of everything going on. And just a glimmer of light, of hope, of grace is what sometimes gets us through the day.
Yeah, I love that. Capturing the light of Christ. That's worth preaching, Phil. I bet you have more than once. I might steal that for later.
Yes.
So, we've been talking about pictures, which is great. But you know what else? You know what's better than talking about pictures? Maybe looking at them.
Yeah, probably.
Phil, rather than just looking at the ones that kind of float over Phil's shoulder in his office, Phil's got some pictures to share with us, and we can take a look at them together, Phil, and maybe just reflect on what we both see in them, and you can tell me what they mean to you, and maybe just spend a little bit of time doing that. And we're not doing it just for our own edification. I think we're doing this as an example for how any of us might go and look at the world with a different perspective or through the lens of the camera. So think about this in terms of something you might try too. But go ahead, Phil.
Okay, so you can see this picture, Kyle. This is a picture of a lily, a flower. I don't remember all the names of all this. And I think it's interesting, Kyle, and interesting for everyone watching this, that I would say when it comes to photography, probably I'd say 75% of photography, I've got a plan, this is where I'm going to be, but 25% of the time I'm just walking by something and I see it and I go, ooh, and that's one of the things that's so important. And this was literally a water lily in my wife Michelle's friend's house in Oregon 4 years ago, just sitting there. And I was like, oh wow, that's just beautiful. And so it's not the greatest picture, but I like it because again, you see the little drops and you can see the color of the flower, and it really, even the reflection in the water. And then Kyle, I was talking earlier, we were talking about lateral falls, and this is a picture of that fall. And I would say, that's a pretty, it's at least, 500, 600, 700 feet. It's a long drop. And it's literally hidden on the side of the road there in the Columbia River Gorge. And you can stop me if you see something, Kyle, or something comes to mind.
Yeah, one of the things that, and I don't want to spend too much time on the technical stuff, but one of the things you can do, and as you beautifully put it, capturing light. Uh, you see in Phil's picture just uh, more water coming than you would in any just blinking of your eye. Right? There's a bit longer an exposure there, and you can just sort of see the flow there in a way that is tremendously beautiful to me. And in some ways, it's not just a snapshot in time, but it sort of tells the story of a little bit of time, right? Maybe
Yep.
not much, a narrow window,
Hmm.
but it helps us, or at least when I look at this, I think about the constancy of the world and also the fact that it's always moving. I see
Sure.
in this that rock that's been the same way for an age or more, and
Yeah.
then the water that is constantly different. And
Hmm.
I, that to me is really really pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a pretty picture because the water just keeps coming. Although it's funny, Kyle, I talked about that consistency of the water coming, and someone once said, "Well, what happens if the water dries up?" And I'm like, "Well, then God will provide the water down the road."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because just case in point, the Canary Spring up in Yellowstone, which is near Mammoth Hot Springs, is this huge spring. You could probably see in pictures. It's usually orange and white. It's like a cascading mountain. Literally 2 days ago, it stopped flowing for the first time in 50 years,
Mm-hmm.
but it will go through cycles. If you've heard stories of Steamboat Geyser and some of these other ones, they go through cycles, and but yet the water still comes back. And just like even if we're in a dry spell ourselves in our faith, there's always the chance, the idea of reformed always reforming is always, there's always a chance and always an opportunity to have that water come back in our lives and in our faith. Speaking of water, so this is, now it's funny. This is called Shoshone Falls, but if on the side, it's interesting that I say that because the Shoshone tribe is where you get the names. But when the English, mainly English settlers in early 1800s came across it, they used a name, but like some parts of our country, you pronounce stuff different ways. And so it's, even though the Shoshone tribe is where they got the name Shoshone from, they pronounce it Shoshone. And this is, they call it the Niagara of the West. Now, interesting, Kyle, in the wintertime, this is going to sound really weird for everyone watching this, they can literally turn this waterfall off.
Mm-hmm.
I have been there in January where it was not even a trickle of water because it's a hydroelectric dam as well as just a waterfall. But to get that mist and to get the rainbow, and actually it's a double rainbow. If you look, it might be hard to see, but it's actually a double rainbow in this picture. But it is as loud. If any of your church members, anyone's been to Niagara Falls, it's just as loud as Niagara Falls. I think it's even taller, just not as wide.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much going on in that photo. I love the way the sky frames the water, and the where the rainbow sits. There's just a great balance in all of that I think is pretty spectacular.
This I was talking for all your viewers. I was talking to you beforehand that this is the Teton Mountain Range. This is Grand Teton here in the center. But this is, if anyone knows the famous Ansel Adams, I think it was 1939, I believe, the black and white photo that he took. Now it's like a stop, and if you go to Grand Teton, this is where you got to go. And this was taken in June of 2018, I believe it was, and it's all green, but you can go different times of year and get different pictures. But it's just, you feel so small compared to a mountain range, and where the Appalachians are obviously so much older and have had so much water and rain over the years and years and years. The Tetons have been around for a fraction, excuse me, of the time that that the Appalachians have. But it's a beautiful beautiful mountain range, and really it creates its own weather. So now, so for me, as I was saying at the beginning, Kyle, it's my love of photography began with scenery, but also went into animals. This was a picture of two bull elk with their horns intertwined. This was January of 2018, I believe, as well. And it wasn't mating seasons. It was just these two guys were bored, kind of like a couple of siblings. You're bored with your sibling, and so you're like, well, let's start fighting, and then you hope no one grabs a crowbar or something. And so this is just two elk just with their horns intertwined. And I, at the time, to be honest, I didn't realize how unique a picture this was until people said it's rare to get a picture of that's so clear of two elk with their horns intertwined, just because you have to be close and they have to not be moving that hard.
Mm-hmm. Phil, this is maybe a strange place to go, but maybe not. You know what this reminds me of? It's the strangest thing. This reminds me of the Psalms. And the images in the poetry of Israel, right? Oftentimes we're reading along and we get these descriptions of nature's grandeur and the awe in them, or we hear them talking about the animals. And for me, that's when I hit those things, often they're like glaze over verses, right? Like, there's nothing to see here, keep moving, look for the theological meat and potatoes here, or the story being told. And I'm realizing as I'm looking at this picture, and I've seen this picture before, you've shown it to me before, but I'm realizing as I look at it that part of what's going on in the Psalms is people are living into the beauty and wonder of what they see. And the lesson there for me, and maybe for all of us, is quite frankly to get out there and see more, right? See more than just our computer screens and our television screens and the four walls at home. But the scripture speaks to me, I think, in a deeper and richer way, because quite frankly, they didn't have cameras, right? The light that they were capturing, they had to capture in words. And so I think it'd be interesting, just as in a devotional exercise, for people to go and find photos like this, which you can find on your screen, and read a psalm in light of it, and see how that psalm might change. So again, maybe a spiritual recommendation for how to hear God's word in a new way, which is really about seeing it and what we capture. So sorry to wax.
No. I think that's a good point, Kyle. That the most of photography, I believe, you can match with a psalm, and a lot of psalms talk about life where it's disoriented. Kyle, you and I were in seminary at the same time with Dr. Brueggemann, and he talked about the Psalms of orientation, disorientation, and new orientation, or reorientation, if you will, the third one. And as a people of God right now, we're in this disorientation. And so to see nature not working or looking like it should, you figure, all these elk are just going to kind of follow the leader, which they usually do. Because when we were at this shot, I get this picture, and then all of a sudden, part of the herd 2 miles down the way starts running at us, and they get probably quarter mile away, and they just stop because they see the two large horses, the Clydesdales, that weigh probably 2,000 pounds apiece, and the Clydesdales scared them so much they literally all put on the brakes and just stopped. And so it's a good analogy with Psalms to see how a lot of times it's not just our lives, it's the life of around us that just doesn't work out right, but yet there's still harmony in the midst of the discord. And I think the Psalms are really such a powerful thing. And for me, spiritually, it's not unheard of to be out, taking pictures. I have a Bible in my car, and I'm taking some pictures and to pull out a Bible and read a psalm. I mean, that is something I've done before, read scripture just to have it with me. So I think it's not a spiritual practice in the sense of what Richard Foster would talk about, or you read in a Marjorie Thompson Soul Feast book. But at the same point, who's to say that going out in nature or driving around town with your camera and a Bible that you can't have a moment of connection with God?
That's beautifully put.
So these two, the one above is the bear 610, and it's crazy. Apparently, all these bears, because they're in national parks, they get tagged and numbered, and so this one is of 610. And she's a grizzly. Is the thought with her two cubs, but again, it's a great illustration of just how those cubs will follow their mom till basically they're about 2 or 3 years old, and then they're on their own. And then the below is so the tops and Grand Teton on the bottom is 3 male bison in the midst of Grand Prismatic Spring. Back in April of 2018, and they're just soaking in the heat of the spring, and they could care less about all the people like, ooh, bison, and taking pictures. Obviously we don't want to be like that lady from Montana who got too close and tripped and fell. Unfortunately, she was okay that the bison didn't run her over or kill her, but still, I think part of the photography, and this taking pictures yourself, is I think it's very important to talk about respect. To respect not just the physical creation, meaning mountains and hills and valleys and grass, but also respect the creation around us. Because not too long after this top picture was taken, I pulled up a little bit further on the road where they were figuring they might cross over, and they did cross over. And I remember very clearly the park ranger saying to this one guy who had this huge telephoto lens, he said, "Sir, get back in your car, get back, because they are coming." And sure enough, probably 30 seconds later, they cross. And the interesting story was, right after that, I'm just waiting to see where they cross over. And this young family with probably like a 4-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son, they're just, they're like, "Oh, it's a bear." And so they're just walking down the road. And I literally, put my arm out, and they weren't super close, but close enough. I said, "Stop." And within probably 30 feet, that bear and her 2 cubs cross right in front of me, and right in front of us. And it was just, for me, no shot is worth putting animals in danger or being disrespectful to creation. And I think that idea of respect, when you're respecting creation, you're respecting God who created creation. I think that's an important thing for me to remember, that sometimes you're not going to get a picture, and sometimes the experience or the memory of not getting a picture is worth more than the picture you would have got.
I love that, Phil, and the application to me. And I have preached this before. When I saw the Mona Lisa at the Louvre, my overall impression of that experience was seeing maybe 100 people in front of me looking at the Mona Lisa through a screen. And the irony, right? Like, I can get on any screen and type MONA, and and it's going to fill in the field for me, right? Yep. And I can see the Mona Lisa on a screen. And the realization there was, if you're just caught up in the screen, then you're not really experiencing what it is to see it. And is a snapshot of you seeing the Mona Lisa in person worth spending the moment you have there on? Or is it about actually seeing, history's arguably most famous painting, right? And you're saying the same thing about nature here, right? don't
Mhm.
spend so much time looking through the lens, right?
Mhm.
Or even on your camera screen, that you fail to see the bears, right?
Mhm.
The point
Mhm.
is to experience creation, not
Document
capture
it.
it like you can have it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure. So the the picture on the left is if people from your church, if they remember, this was about a month ago. This pictures of this bison standing near Old Faithful, and he was just kind of standing there doing his own thing. And unfortunately, when the Old Faithful went off, he knew it was going off too, and he moved away, but he moved the opposite direction of where I was. But still, it's one of those shots that you could try your whole lifetime and never get a shot. And then the one on the right is of a great horned owl, and we have lakes here in Idaho all over. Minnesota has the 10,000 lakes. We don't have 10,000, but we have a lot. And this owl was in a row of trees, and he was up there. And to be honest, he was kind of closed, his eyes closed, just not caring about anything. And so I was the guy who makes some sort of sound, and that is the picture I got, is him looking down at me going, "What are you doing?" I mean, I mean, for me, when I look at that picture, there is some anger there, and kind of bewilderment of like, who are you to disturb me? That kind of look. And but I wasn't trying to disturb them. But one of the things they tell you when it comes to especially owls is don't use a flash because it can blind them.
Mhm.
And so this picture, to be honest, even though it looks like I took it middle of the day, I was taken at 7 at night. I mean, it was getting dark. This was about 3 months ago. And so, but again, both the owl and the bison were not necessarily planned things, in the sense of I went to Yellowstone, or I went to Market Lake where the owl picture was taken with the hope of getting a picture, but it's not like planning for the Milky Way or something where you can really know where it's going to show up. Because you can go to, a lot of time photography, I don't know if you know this term, Kyle, they call it getting skunked, where you go and you think you're going to get a picture of something and then you get nothing. And there's always that chance. But I think for me with photography and with our faith, it's always the hope of the next picture, just like it's for us as Christians, it's always the hope of the next day.
Hmm.
All right, so hopefully some of you were able to see the comet Neowise. This picture, obviously Neowise is that little white blurry thing, and this is taken east of town where we live up in the hills, and this was taken probably 10:30 at night. And the red dot is of a wind turbine. We have almost 500 wind turbines west of town, or east of town, excuse me. And that all the lights you see down below, all the little dots, are the city of Idaho Falls and Ammon. And so, but you talk about light pollution. This is an example of that. I mean, I'm still able to get a great shot, but still, that's how much a difference a city can make to getting light pollution. And I think it's just a reminder of the importance of getting away from it all, because you can really see the world around you when you're not in the world around you, so to speak.
Yeah. That one's my favorite. I think that I love the perspective and I love the contrast. And in terms of a photo, the contrast there just makes the comment, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's all well and good to get a nice photo of a white streak that you happen to know is a comet, but
Mm-hmm.
the way that everything offers context there, I think, is really important. And if you listen to any pastor talk any length of time, you're probably going to hear the word context. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And, that picture is all about the context, the framing, and how the city does that.
Mm-hmm. So this, again, this is the shot before, Kyle, was of Comet Neowise. And then I decided, it's getting late like, oh, let's take pictures. See, maybe I kind of know what to do settings wise. So I'm going to take a picture. Maybe I can get a Milky Way. And it's probably not, it's a little bit hard to get the full scope of it. And again, because it's so dark, but you can really see the center of this with the wind turbines. And then this bright spot here for everyone, that's Jupiter. But to just see literally the Milky Way, and I think this shot, Kyle, for us as Christians is important, how the sense that we can go through our lives and not be aware of God's presence, and then boom, something happens, and all of a sudden we look back and say, oh, God was definitely here through all these moments over the last week or the last month or last year. And so the Milky Way is very much that kind of perspective and creation, where the Milky Way is always there. It's not like we're not in the Milky Way. We're always in the Milky Way. But are we slowing down enough? Are we looking and reflecting enough to be able to see the Milky Way versus just pass by it? And I think that's a challenge for us in Christianity is, are we too busy about doing the work of God that we ignore God?
Mm-hmm. That seems very familiar.
Let's see what. There's just another. That one you can kind of see a little bit better. And again, the interesting thing to just show here, the orange kind of at the bottom is actually the light from these wind turbines that I would say, Kyle, are several miles away. But that is enough light with your camera to make this look orange from that. And then there were these two cars of random people, and they were just kind of hanging out, watching everything. And even it's kind of hard to see, but I don't know if the little mouse icon or arrow points out. There's a little bit of a shooting star, like a meteor, like here. It's a faint line. So even though we're not at this point, this picture was taken before the meteor shower, the Perseid meteor shower, which is happening now, was happening. You still got to see it. And I think, again, slowing down, taking the time, and then trying something new, and voila, you get pictures that 30 years from now you can reflect on and say, wow, I was glad I got that picture. Just like in our faith, how it's so important to slow down and have perspective, to look back and say, God was there the whole time, I just wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, I love that one too. So.
And the last one, this is interesting. This is to throw all the viewers off, to say, like, this is like, having your daughter, Malin, and our son, Jack, are 8 months apart in age. And these are the kind of pictures I like showing Jack to throw him off, to say, what is this? This is the audience participation part. What I'll share you what each of these is. So this one at the bottom is actually the moon. There's a computer program, I've spun it, and so that's a picture of the moon. The one to the left, you can kind of tell it's cattails, again spun. The top right one is a reflection of the same cattails in the bottom left are in the top right, but the water is reflected. And then the top left is actually the Milky Way, but it's spun. And so it's interesting perspective how sometimes in photography and sometimes in life, just changing the way you look at something can dramatically change your interpretation of it. So I think it's it's always being open to a different perspective, a different way of looking at things. And I think that's kind of what the hope with these was to just kind of change kind of how we're looking at stuff. So that's a kind of little bit of it. And so to not try to sound too OCD, but still in the midst of everything this year, I think I estimated I've taken 4,000 pictures, which sounds like a lot, which it is. But the joy of photography, and for your congregation and anyone who watches this, is that with technology the way it is with memory cards, you can take 4,000 pictures. And to be honest, if I get 100 good pictures out of 4,000, I'm excited. This is not baseball where you have to bat, 400. It sounds good. This is photography where if you're batting, point, .05, if you're batting like less than 100, past the Mendoza line, then, that's awesome. If 20% of your pictures turned out, you would be excited. And so I think for us, it's understanding that God knows that we're not going to be able to give 100%, or we're not going to be able to get it right 100%, but yet God is pleased with the fact that we're trying. And if we get 10% of it right, then God is happy with that. And I feel like in photography, it's the same thing. If I get 10% or even less of the shots I take turn out to be decent, then I'm happy with it because I know I've tried. And I think that's part of it, is just with our faith, is just trying.
Well, Phil, thank you so much. We'll take that as the best place we can to stop. And thanks for sharing your photos. Thanks for sharing all those wonderful insights. I hope that we have encouraged you maybe to take out your camera. And, most of us have a phone that has a pretty good camera on it. To take out your camera and take pictures. If you're part of the Alamance congregation, or even if you're not, we'd love to tell you more about our photography club that we have going on. We call it Divine Focus. And we'd love to have you share with that in the group, or even just to our page. But Phil, thank you so much for being on with me. It's great to catch up, and we'll catch you next time. This has been Coffee with Kyle and with Phil. And Phil, you take care. Be good.
Bye.
All right. Bye.